They're keeping her on out of pity. It's like watching someone water a dead plant. That sentence, whispered loud enough to be heard, wasn't meant to be subtle. It wasn't meant to be private. It was meant to land. It landed. I was standing no more than 10 feet away, balancing a tray of coffee cups meant for the VP panel, when Kyle said it. Loudly. Casually. Like he was talking about an old couch someone couldn't bear to throw out. And just like that, I wasn't a colleague. I was office furniture. I didn't flinch. I didn't look up. I just kept walking, tray steady, smile frozen. The quarterly kickoff was in full swing. 80-something employees packed into the conference center ballroom, dressed in their best, pretending not to check their emails during the CEO's monologue. Projectors beamed the new sales targets across the stage like commandments. Spotlights caught the glitter on Melissa's blouse. The smell of burnt coffee and corporate ambition clung to the air. And me? I stood stage left. Same place I always did. The unofficial coordinator. The safe pair of hands. 17 years, no scandals, no skipped deadlines, and apparently no future. Because 2 days earlier, quietly, in a 7:12 a.m. email with no subject line, I was informed that my role had been reassessed to align with company priorities. That's how they phrased it. Like they were doing me a favor. In truth, they slashed my pay by 35%. Stripped my title, pulled me from all client-facing meetings, and this morning, when the VP of Sales thanked the entire forward strategy team by name, he skipped right over mine, just like that. My name, gone. My record, erased. But I didn't leave. I stayed, because I still had one more thing left to give them. And it wasn't coffee. The applause that followed his speech was the kind that echoed in a hollow room. Forced, polite, already fading before it fully began. I stood there with my tray, still pretending it didn't sting, still pretending I didn't notice the sidelong glances. Melissa, my former mentee, winked at Kyle as he chuckled into his drink. I remember when she used to scribble notes in a spiral-bound notebook and call me boss lady, with admiration in her voice. Now she was up there presenting numbers I'd pulled, wearing confidence like perfume, sharp and sweet, with just enough edge to cut me out of the frame. I wasn't supposed to be here today. That's what Max, my director, had said when he handed me the email about the pay cut. He didn't even look at me when he said it, just shuffled the papers on his desk like he was annoyed I was making this awkward. This isn't personal, Clara. You've been great, truly. But we're moving in a more agile direction. Agile, that was the word they'd clung to. Like being loyal and thorough meant I was obsolete. I'd smiled, nodded, took the papers, walked out. But I didn't walk away. Not yet. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew the floor plan. I knew who still whispered my name when they couldn't close a deal. I knew which clients signed renewals only because I'd taken late calls on weekends, walked them through endless revisions, remembered their kids' birthdays, and most of all, I knew this wasn't over. So I showed up to the kickoff like I was supposed to. In my best navy blazer, hair done, lipstick neutral, tray in hand, like they wanted me invisible. They thought they could unwrite me, recast me as support staff in my own story. But the thing about being written off, it gives you room to rewrite everything. As the final slide clicked forward, Kyle stepped back to the mic. He smiled that trademark cocky smile, white teeth, zero substance, and said, "And now, we celebrate the people who helped get us here. New voices, fresh energy, leaner leadership." His eyes never landed on me, but mine never left him. I moved quietly toward the podium, coffee cups still balanced on the tray. The crowd was already shifting in their seats, ready for brunch and badge scans and door prizes. I reached the end of the stage, set the tray down on the side table, and then, with a calm so steady it startled even me, I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out a single envelope. Not flashy, not marked, just thick enough to carry weight. I didn't hand it to anyone. I didn't say a word. I just placed it, right there on the podium beside Kyle's untouched notes. He stared at it, confused, uncertain. Melissa stiffened. Max finally turned toward me, and for the first time in months, I looked him straight in the eye. I didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't smile, just whispered 2 words, all noted. Then I turned and walked off stage, still standing, still silent, but not for long. I didn't start this job dreaming of titles or corner offices. When I joined Whitmore and Langley, I was 31, recently divorced, and praying for something that felt steady. something that didn't collapse under me. Back then, the company barely had a sales department, just 2 guys and a spreadsheet that hadn't been updated since the Bush administration. But I saw a possibility, not in numbers or projections, but in people. And people? That I understood. I didn't just close accounts. I built relationships. I remembered birthdays, sent handwritten thank you notes. I drove 6 hours once just to shake a nervous client's hand before a deal closed, and when the regional manager left unexpectedly in year 3, I stepped up without hesitation. No one asked me to. But I did it anyway. I built the training modules from scratch, standardized the pitch decks, created the internal CRM system that they now call Legacy Flow. I stayed late, trained every new rep like they were my own. I held that team together with sheer will and post-it notes. And I loved it. I didn't need spotlights. The work spoke for itself. For a while, that was enough, until it wasn't. It started slow. A new manager came in, Lucas Brennan. Fresh from a tech firm, teeth always too white, cologne always too strong. He liked to call me Clara Bear in meetings. Said it was cute, said it was harmless. I asked him once to stop. He laughed. You women and your boundaries. That should have been the first sign. Then came the reviews. Before Lucas, I'd always scored consistently high across leadership, retention, innovation. Now suddenly I was resistant to change, lacked digital agility. One review even said I needed to project more enthusiasm. Funny thing though, my team hit target every quarter. My clients stayed, my reps stuck around. But enthusiasm, apparently that's what they were measuring now. Still, I stayed quiet, told myself it was growing pains, until they promoted Tasha. Tasha was fine. Smart, fresh out of MBA, sharp heels and sharper elbows. But I trained her, sat next to her the day she cried after her first failed pitch. I told her it happens, that failure's just a bruise, not a death sentence. She nodded. And then 8 months later, she was named Regional Innovation Lead, a title I'd pitched for years. A role built on a proposal I'd written. They didn't even change the wording. When I asked Lucas about it, he smiled like a man who didn't care how much it cost you to stay calm. We just thought she'd bring a fresher voice. You've got your plate full already, Clara Bear. I stared at him. No anger. Just a dull throb behind my eyes, like a bruise blooming. That night, I opened my just-in-case folder, the one I never thought I'd need. And for the first time in over a decade, I made a copy of everything. The next few months blurred into a kind of quiet erosion. I wasn't pushed, not all at once. That would have been too obvious. No, they preferred the slow drip. I'd show up to Monday meetings and find my name missing from the invite list. Oh, must have been a glitch, someone would say, eyes already looking past me. Documents I used to review were now being sent directly to Tasha. Sales campaigns were launched without so much as a heads up. Campaigns I'd helped draft during strategy sessions months earlier. Then came the rebranding. Modern Sales DNA, they called it. A sleek PDF deck with neon lines and buzzwords like disruption and velocity. Lucas passed it out like candy at a trade show. Only later did I realize, those diagrams, those workflow trees, they were mine. Lifted directly from my training slides with the colors tweaked and my name removed. Tasha presented them at a leadership retreat. Got a standing ovation. I watched the video later, alone in my office, volume low. I didn't flinch, but I did whisper, noted. And that became my rhythm. I started saving everything. Every edited version, every draft, every email thread that quietly excluded me. I even recorded my Zoom calls. Nothing illegal, just documentation. I labeled the folder Clarity, because it wasn't revenge I wanted. It was truth, proof. Something to hold when the gaslighting started. But what broke me wasn't the theft, it was the silence. The people I mentored stopped making eye contact. One by one, they distanced themselves, like I had something contagious. Even Sharon, who once cried in my kitchen after her divorce, started forwarding my emails to Tasha, just to make sure we're all aligned. And then came the slap I didn't see coming. The annual Client Awards dinner. Every year, I presented the recognition for top-tier client partnerships, because I built those partnerships. I'd been the face of retention since year 4, but this time, no invite came. I thought it was an oversight. I even emailed HR, half laughing, asking if mine got lost. They replied, the committee felt it was time for new representation. I watched from my couch that night, wine glass untouched, laptop open. There on stage, my slide deck, my speech barely edited, my client photos, and Tasha. In a silver dress I recognized from last year's Nordstrom catalog, smiling wide, basking in applause. Lucas stood beside her, clapping too hard. The camera cut to a banner behind them, honoring excellence in leadership. I didn't cry. I just folded the laptop shut. Then I turned to the whiteboard behind my desk, wiped it clean, and wrote 3 words in red marker, big and slow. They forgot who. Because they had. They forgot who built the system they now worshipped, who stayed when everyone else left, who trained the woman they were now trying to turn into me. And somewhere deep beneath the ache and the insult, something new sparked. Not bitterness, not yet, but clarity. Because if they were going to force me out of my own house, I'd at least leave with the keys to the front door. I didn't cry the day I found out. I didn't slam a door or yell or call anyone names. I just sat there, still, like a lake holding its breath. Because I knew. When I walked into the Thursday morning leadership meeting, an agenda I used to set myself, and saw my name missing from the list of speakers, I knew. When Max smiled at me from the front of the room and said, "We'll just have Melissa cover your section this time, Clara," I smiled back. Quiet, small, like they wanted me to be. Melissa didn't even flinch. She took the mic, clicked open my deck, my numbers, my case studies, my slides, and launched into it like it was hers. And maybe to everyone else in that room it was. Maybe that was the point. I stared down at my hands. The same hands that used to wave whiteboards and shape pitches. The hands that held trembling cups of coffee during 7 a.m. strategy huddles. The hands that used to shake during client renegotiations and still sign the deals anyway. And now they just rested there. Useless. Melissa misquoted a stat about our Arizona rollout. I opened my mouth to correct her, then stopped. No one was looking at me. No one expected me to speak. Even the intern was watching her. So I sat and I listened, and something inside me cracked, softly like an eggshell. Not enough to spill, just enough to know something fragile had shifted. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling change color from black to bruised blue, and somewhere between 3 a.m. and dawn, I got up, poured coffee, and made a list. Not of names, of silence. Every meeting I'd been excluded from. Every client account reassigned, without so much as an FYI. Every time Max used the word legacy in a way that felt like a compliment, but landed like a countdown. I didn't write in anger. I wrote like I was mapping a crime scene. Because it was. They didn't fire me. That would have made noise. They were bleeding me out, quietly, incrementally, strategically, and they thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. And not just with my brain, but with my gut. And my gut had never been wrong. Not in 20 years. So I started preparing, not for revenge. Not yet. For clarity. I backed up everything. Notes, emails, old forecasts, timelines, draft decks, even scribbles from post-its I'd stuck to my desk during last year's budget sprint. I made copies, dated them, stored them in folders titled with flowers, iris, daffodil, bluebell. Just in case someone snooped. I wasn't planning to use them, but if I ever needed to remember what was mine, I'd have a trail, because I wasn't just being forgotten, I was being rewritten. And I knew exactly where to begin unraveling their version of the story. 2 weeks later, Max asked me to sit in on a call with one of our oldest clients. Just to listen in. His exact words. I'd brought that client in during my 3rd year. I'd flown across 2 time zones and closed the deal with nothing but a pen, a flip chart, and a warm handshake. And now I was there to listen. So I did. The call started with small talk. Melissa led the intro, reading from a prepared script like she was hosting a podcast. I watched her face in the video window, polished, poised, painfully rehearsed. And then the client asked a question. A simple one. How will the new strategy affect our quarterly customizations? Melissa blinked, stammered. She hadn't been briefed. Max leaned forward and tried to jump in, but the moment had already gone slack. The client's smile tightened, the silence cracked, and then he said it. I'll call Clara later. She always made it clear. Click. End of call. Max stared at the screen. Melissa flushed. I sipped my tea. No one said a word. That night, I moved the flower folders onto a new drive. External. Password protected. Labeled simply, Clarity. I wasn't planning to launch a war, but I was ready to survive one. Then came the Sales Summit, an annual all-staff event. Big screens, big speeches, big egos. Melissa was asked to present the future of the department. The new voice of our brand, they called her. I was seated at the back, No name tag this time. She walked on stage in a white suit, clicked open the presentation, and I froze. Slide 3. My story, my numbers, my words. Even the client quote I'd transcribed during a call, verbatim, word for word, now stripped of attribution and credited to sales insights. She read it like it was hers. And then, slide 5 glitched. The screen blinked, froze. A flicker of a file name popped up before it corrected itself. Iris forecast final CLJAT and tech. Someone near the front leaned toward Melissa, whispered. She kept going, voice tight. I didn't move. I just reached into my purse, felt the edge of the drive, and waited. That night, I went home and stared at my kitchen window for a long time. The street outside was quiet. The world kept spinning, but inside me, something had gone very still. Because it wasn't just about a stolen slide deck anymore. It was about being erased. Neatly, smilingly, like I never mattered to begin with. And they thought I wouldn't fight back because I didn't shout. Because I still showed up on time. Because I brought coffee to the interns and remembered birthdays. They mistook grace for weakness, but they forgot I taught them everything they knew. And just because I hadn't raised my voice, didn't mean I hadn't been taking notes. The room was too perfect. The kind of perfect that made your stomach twist. Tall white banners lined the stage, etched with gold foil logos and the slogan, Reimagining the Future of Sales. The conference ballroom shimmered with soft spotlighting. Rows of padded chairs were filled with regional managers, department heads, even a few board members. This wasn't just another quarterly update. It was the grand reveal. Of what? Or rather, who the company was putting on a pedestal next. I stood in the back, alone, holding a small leather folio against my chest like a shield. My badge still read, Senior Strategic Advisor, though we all knew that title was as hollow as the promises that came with it. At the front, under the soft golden glow, was Mark. Same pressed navy suit, same rehearsed confidence, same clicker in hand. And now, he said into the mic, pausing for effect, I want to introduce the woman who represents everything this new chapter stands for, fresh thinking, agility, and leadership that inspires. He turned, hand extended. Amanda. The applause that followed was immediate, loud, and painfully familiar. I'd seen that deck before. Built it, actually. Down to the placement of the case study slides. I'd written the phrasing he just used. I'd mapped out the sales pilot Amanda was now being praised for pioneering. All while I was conveniently placed in transition. Amanda stepped up in a white power suit that practically screamed chosen one. Her heels clicked confidently as she took the mic, her smile blinding, and then she said it. Well, when I saw the gaps in our sales process, I knew we needed to change everything, starting with mindset. I didn't flinch, not this time. But my hand slowly slipped into my bag, fingers brushing the cool edge of something small and black. A drive. I had told myself I wouldn't use it, that I didn't need to, that dignity was enough. But then slide 12 came up, and on the bottom right corner, in faded gray text, was my name. They hadn't even changed the footer. There was a half-second stutter in Amanda's voice. Barely noticeable, except to me. Mark shifted in his chair. A bead of sweat dotted his brow. They had missed it. Everyone else was clapping. But not David. He stood near the tech panel in the back, headset around his neck, expression blank. When our eyes met, he nodded. Not big, not obvious, just enough to say I'm ready when you are. I didn't rush. I walked up the aisles slowly, heels soft on the carpet, letting the moment stretch. A few heads turned, then more. Amanda froze mid-sentence. Clara, she said, voice too light, too falsely surprised. Oh, I didn't know you were here. I stepped onto the stage and took the mic. I wasn't invited, I said quietly but clearly, but I've been watching. You could hear a pin drop. Mark stood, face red. Clara, this isn't the... I'll just be a moment, I smiled gently. I only have one thing to share. Then I turned to David. He plugged in the drive. The screen behind Amanda flickered, then blinked again. Gone were the polished slides, the sales jargon, the flashy graphs. In their place a folder, labeled in all caps. Contributions C. Jensen. One by one the contents began to open. First, the email exchanges, dozens of them. Some dating back over 2 years. Drafts of proposals, performance metrics, campaign timelines, and notes scribbled with my digital signature, each clearly showing who authored what. Amanda's name was barely there. When it was always after mine. Then came the project blueprints. mapped out in my formatting, including one file that had been sent to Mark and Amanda with the subject line, "Use this outline if you're presenting to senior leadership." Someone gasped. The room had shifted. I could feel it. Mark leaned forward at the front row, his hand half raised, like he wanted to yank the HDMI cable out of the projector but knew it was already too late. Then David played the last file. It wasn't a document, it was audio, from a team meeting, recorded on my phone. You could hear Mark's voice saying, "Don't worry about giving Clara credit. She'll be out of here by end of quarter anyway. Let Amanda run with it." Dead silence. Then came Amanda's voice. Light, amused. "She'll never push back. She's too professional for that." And then the laughter. Casual, cold. The laughter that burned into my memory every time I stared at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering if I was overreacting. I stepped away from the mic. No one clapped. No one moved. Then a voice, steady and sure, came from the back of the room. "I worked with Clara on the Horizon project," said Jen, one of the senior clients. "That strategy she presented, I have the original email she sent me, 2 years ago." Amanda opened her mouth but no sound came out. Mark stood. "This is being twisted. It's out of context." "It's all in context," I said softly. "Every file is time-stamped, every contribution documented. You thought I'd just vanish quietly, Mark. You taught Amanda how to delete my name, but you forgot. I never stopped backing up the truth." A long, tense pause. Then the CEO stood up. He wasn't smiling. "Clara," he said, voice slow, measured. "Do you have a full copy of this?" I met his gaze. "Yes." "Then I think we'll be adjourning this portion of the presentation," he said, turning to Amanda. "Please step down." Amanda's face crumbled. Mark looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. The CEO turned to the head of HR. "Schedule a private meeting with Clara today." I stepped down from the stage, not triumphant, just still. Not angry, just done hiding. As I passed Amanda, she reached for my arm. "Clara, I didn't mean for it to go this far." I looked at her, not with hate, just with truth. It always goes this far. You just never think you'll get caught. And then I walked down the aisle as the room shifted around me. Some people looked at their shoes, some whispered, but many looked at me, really looked. For the first time in a long time. Not as someone fading out, but someone stepping in. And that, more than the files, more than the exposure, that was the real turning point. I didn't return to that boardroom, but I did hear what happened. Martin's downfall wasn't just swift, it was surgical. Word traveled fast, but consequences traveled faster. The board issued a formal statement by noon the next day. Termination for cause, breach of ethics, failure to disclose conflicts of interest. That wasn't all. His name was blacklisted by every major firm in the city within 48 hours. I didn't make the calls, but someone did. Someone who had been quietly watching him burn bridges for years. I heard he tried to plead his case, sent long, rambling emails to board members, past clients, even journalists, but no one bit. His reputation had collapsed in on itself, and there was nothing left to salvage. Amanda, though, she thought she'd be spared. She tried to pivot fast, denied she ever knew about the forged contracts, the buried memos, the silenced whistleblowers. But her name was all over the digital trail I had handed in. She had approved the budget cuts, she had forwarded the emails that erased my name, and she had lied, under oath. Legal launched an internal audit. HR reopened files from 3 years ago. Turns out, I wasn't the first woman she'd helped push out. She was suspended by Friday, fired by Tuesday. But that wasn't the end of it. 2 former employees filed formal complaints. One brought a lawyer, another brought receipts. The local news picked it up within a week. Whistleblower files lawsuit against former executives of Cranford and West. A blurry photo of Amanda walking briskly out of the courthouse in sunglasses made its rounds online. The comments were brutal, even worse than the article. Then came the subpoena. Martin went silent after that. Rumor had it he left the state. I don't know where he is now. Some say Florida. Others say hiding in plain sight, working under a different name. But one thing I know for sure. They'll never sit at another boardroom table again. Not because someone stopped them, but because no one will ever trust them to hold power again. And that's a sentence far worse than prison. A sentence written in silence. I didn't celebrate. There were no champagne toasts, no victory dances, just the quiet knowledge that justice, this time, hadn't whispered, it had roared. But even so, I stayed cautious. For weeks, I kept my head down, working quietly with the transitional team. I didn't want their job, I didn't want their old titles. I just wanted things to be clean for once. Still, people came to me. Raina from analytics, Jacob from implementation, Kara, yes, that Kara, who once couldn't get a meeting without Amanda copying her on every email. They started calling me the one who cleared the air. Clients reached out too, not to Martin, not to Amanda, but to the ones we once were told to stay behind the curtain. And just like that, the curtain burned. I heard Amanda tried to apply for a position overseas. They checked references. One phone call later, offer rescinded. Martin, according to someone on LinkedIn, was seen working a tech support line under a fake surname. No photo, just initials. But everyone knew. You could almost feel the weight of their erasure. There was a sort of poetic silence to it, like the company was detoxing. No more early morning tirades from Martin. No more Amanda's icy notes in all caps. Review this urgently. Their offices sat dark for days before facilities quietly repurposed them into break rooms. The door plaques came down. But I kept one. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Because the real power, it wasn't in taking their seat. It was in building something where no one had to fight to be seen. I never saw Amanda again, but I heard she filed for bankruptcy within months. A business she tried to start collapsed under pending litigation. No investor wanted her name on paper. Martin? Well, sometimes I get anonymous emails. No subject, no message, just attachments, old team photos, presentations I built, graphs he claimed credit for. I never respond, but I know it's him. He's watching. But he can't reach. That's the worst punishment of all, isn't it? To see everything you tried to destroy come back stronger, without you. To be erased from the very story you tried to rewrite in your favor. And still, I don't hate them. I don't need to. Because in the end, they buried themselves. I just stopped digging. Some mornings now, I sit on my little porch with a cup of coffee and no inbox screaming for my attention. It's quiet, not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from choosing peace over permission. I no longer wear my old company badge. I keep it in a drawer with a bent paperclip and the first business card I ever printed. It's a quiet kind of museum, I guess. A collection of reminders, not of what they took from me, but of what I reclaimed. There's a garden now. I started it the week after everything collapsed, when Martin's name was stripped off the directory and Amanda's resignation hit the wire. At first, I just planted rosemary, then some lavender. Now it's a small jungle of green I didn't know I needed. One afternoon, a neighbor passed by and asked, "Did you hire a landscaper?" I smiled. "Nope. Just started digging." She looked surprised. "But you were always so polished. I thought your hands were for laptops, not soil." I shrugged. Turns out they're good for both. And that's the thing, isn't it? We spend so long convincing others we belong at the table that we forget we can build our own. And sometimes that table isn't made of boardroom oak in conference calls. Sometimes it's made of dirt, of second chances, of something quieter, something that grows. A few weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail, real mail, with a stamp and all. It was from a former intern I barely remembered mentoring. She wrote, "Seeing you speak up, it made me realize I don't have to shrink to survive. I just wanted to say thank you." I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe none of it had been wasted. I didn't reply to that intern's letter right away. I held on to it for days. It sat beside my coffee mug, its envelope softening at the edges. And then, one evening, I wrote back with a simple line. "You don't need anyone's permission to take up space." Because that's what it had taken me decades to learn. That sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is not shout louder, but to stand still, let the storm pass, and then rebuild in the quiet. There's something sacred about starting over on your own terms. I don't attend big networking galas anymore. I don't show up to every award dinner or industry panel. But I do show up for my team. I show up for the ones who were once made to feel small, who now walk into my office and ask questions without fear. There's a photo on the wall now. It's not from a magazine feature or some corporate women in leadership event. It's a candid shot. Me in the break room, laughing with Kara, Raina, and Jacob. Coffee cups in hand, no stage, no press, just real people building something real. One day, Kara asked if I'd ever thought about telling my story publicly. A podcast, maybe. A memoir. I said maybe, one day. For now, I'm more interested in building a space where stories like mine never have to happen again. Where no one has to carry folders of proof just to be believed. Where being good at your job doesn't mean swallowing every insult just to stay afloat. Where women, and anyone else they try to push to the margins, don't just survive, they lead. And if you're still here, still listening, maybe this story was meant for you. If you've ever been called too much, too emotional, too ambitious, this is for you. If they ever tried to erase you, overlook you, underpay you, this is for you. You're not what they said, you're what you choose to become after. So take your time, heal, grow something wild, build something quiet. And when you're ready, let them hear you. Not with noise, but with your name on the door. And if any part of this story found its way into your chest, if it made you pause, maybe even tear up, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if someone you care about is walking through something heavy right now, share this with them. Maybe it's the nudge they didn't know they needed. Stick around by subscribing. We tell stories that speak for those who've been quiet too long.